Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely dismantle that age-old myth of the flashy millionaire and really dig into why true, lasting financial freedom usually comes from the most unglamorous places imaginable. You know the narrative we're fed constantly, right? You've got to invent the next big app for dog-walking iguanas, rent out a sleek glass office, and become a viral sensation just to build real wealth. But what if the people actually securing their financial futures are doing it completely under the radar? I'm talking about businesses that absolutely nobody is bragging about at a fancy dinner party.
Just think about it for a second. On one hand, you've got the Instagram-famous entrepreneur constantly chasing trends. They're dealing with the massive stress of securing venture capital, chasing algorithms, and honestly, just trying to look successful. But on the other hand, you have the quiet, wealthy millionaire next door. They're just an everyday person running a local laundromat, maybe a junk removal service, or a storage facility. They aren't trying to look wealthy at all. They are actually building wealth by simply optimizing a boring system that solves constant, everyday problems. So, let's kick things off with Section 1, the boring business advantage.
We really need to anchor our assumptions here in hard math, because the cultural narrative we hear is almost always driven by exceptional outliers instead of everyday reality. Despite this pervasive myth that almost all businesses fail, 2024 Bureau of Labor Statistics data shows us something pretty surprising. More than half are actually still standing after 5 years. Now sure, 20.4% fail in year 1, and yeah, 65.3% are gone by year 10. That sounds incredibly intimidating at first glance, but flip that perspective for a minute. A massive portion of entrepreneurs are actually succeeding over the long haul. The real secret, though, is hidden when you look at which industries are surviving.
And this is absolutely fascinating. When you look at the survivors, boring essential services almost always sit right at the top, while the sexy tech and fashion apps sink straight to the bottom. Why? Well, it's pretty simple. Essential services cater to absolute necessities. Trash always needs to be removed, right? Clothes always need to be washed. When you're deciding what path to take, this data proves that solving a constant, undeniable need drastically improves your odds of survival compared to trying to invent a brand new market out of thin air.
Which brings us right into Section 2, disconnecting time from money.
Okay, so let's see how this builds into the first of 5 massive psychological shifts we need to cover today, untethering your income from your physical energy. Look, when you work a traditional job, or even if you operate as a freelancer, you're trapped in a one-to-one relationship. If you get sick, if you burn out, or if you just want to take a well-deserved vacation, your income grinds to an absolute halt. The crucial point here is that while a boring business still takes a ton of work up front, it eventually breaks that silent trap of trading your hours for dollars. Imagine owning a small self-storage facility. The data shows a standard 10 by 10 unit brings in about $119 a month. If you have dozens of these, the customer pays monthly, the physical space is doing all the heavy lifting, and your role shifts entirely to just managing a system. You aren't clocking in to earn that specific $119 anymore. The system generates it for you.
I actually want you to stop and answer this direct question honestly right now. Really think about it, because it reveals exactly what your current income model demands of you. If every single dollar you earn requires your physical presence, you don't actually own a business, you own a job. And hey, there is absolutely nothing inherently wrong with a job, but it's a critical piece of information you need to confront if your ultimate goal is absolute time freedom.
Because as you start measuring your worth in the systems you've built rather than the hours you've worked, this profound Morgan Housel quote becomes your new reality. Now, don't get me wrong. Those initial months of starting a boring business will absolutely feel like a grueling second job. But once you implement things like automated collections, standardized problem solving, and hired maintenance, you cross a major threshold. You buy back your time. And as Housel points out, having total control over your own Tuesday afternoon is quite literally the highest form of luxury in the modern world. Moving on to the second psychological shift, and this is a big one. Choosing a business that nobody brags about at dinner actually frees up enormous mental energy. Why? Because you finally stop competing for social media validation. Just think about how much energy flashier entrepreneurs waste on their brand aesthetic, perfectly curating their Instagram feed, and just trying to look successful. In a boring business, your customers only care about one thing. Did you solve their problem reliably? By letting go of your ego, you get to funnel 100% of your energy straight into operations and profit, rather than worrying about public perception.
All right, let's dive into Section 3, mastering the psychological shifts.
Now we're going to explore how your relationship with both work and fear fundamentally reorganizes itself. We're hitting shifts 3 and 4 here, and this is really where the mental transformation happens for successful business owners. When you shift to thinking in systems, you realize that buying a proven, boring business is basically like renovating a house that already has a tested foundation, rather than blindly trying to build walls from scratch with no blueprint. So this is our third shift. Instead of agonizing over how original is my idea, you start asking the much better question, how repeatable is this process? Buying a 15-year-old laundromat means the absolute hardest question. Does demand actually exist here? Has already been answered for you. Your only job is to step in, optimize the routes, fix the machines, and make that existing system hum.
And this completely changes your relationship with fear. You actually stop fearing a lack of adrenaline. You start to realize that while people vote for exciting, flashy trends, the market ultimately weighs steady, boring cash flow. That's the fourth shift. We are so conditioned to think that success has to feel like a wild roller coaster ride. But talk to the most successful owners of unglamorous businesses, and they'll tell you their day-to-day is actually quite calm, almost monotonous even. Adrenaline is not a sign of success. More often than not, it's just a massive distraction. You really learn to embrace the quiet consistency of that weighing machine.
Moving right along to Section 4, redefining the true risk.
We have officially arrived at the fifth shift, and honestly, this is the absolute aha moment of this entire explainer. When most people think about risk, they think about the fear of failing publicly, right? Like, what will people think of me? But true business risk is something entirely different, and it is rooted in this staggering statistic. According to CB Insights, 42% of failed businesses shut down simply because there was no real market need for their product. 42%. Just think about how tragic that is. Nearly half of all failed entrepreneurs poured their life savings, their sweat, and their tears into building something that the market just frankly didn't want.
So we really must completely redefine what risk is. Risk isn't doing something unoriginal. Risk is betting your entire livelihood on a passing trend rather than an everyday constant, like trash removal or plumbing. A trending app can lose its user base literally overnight. But no matter what is trending on social media, people are still going to generate trash, pipes are still going to leak, and people will definitely still need a place to store their extra stuff. The absolute safest bet you can make is on a constant, undeniable human necessity.
Okay, let's get into Section 5, common mistakes to avoid. Now, before you rush out and buy a massive fleet of pool maintenance trucks, we need to cover the harsh realities of execution. A boring business is incredibly resilient, sure, but it is definitely not immune to bad management. Let's look at the primary ways people accidentally sabotage themselves. According to the Small Business Administration, you cannot underestimate operating capital because an overwhelming 82% of failures are tied strictly to cash flow running dry. People are generally very good at calculating what it costs to open the doors on day one, but they completely forget to calculate what it costs to keep the lights on for the first 6 to 12 months while the customer flow actually stabilizes. You don't just need startup capital, you need a massive, comfortable cushion of operating capital.
You've also absolutely got to dodge these rapid-fire pitfalls. The deadliest mistake by far, trying to scale up to 3 locations before you truly understand how to run just one. Listen closely here. Multiplying locations before you have a perfected system doesn't multiply your profits. It just multiplies your chaos. You also can't just assume a storage unit will work in your town just because it crushed it in another. Demand is fiercely, fiercely local. And finally, never treat a boring business as a temporary stepping stone. If you don't commit to the long-term system, it's never going to yield that long-term freedom you're looking for.
Bringing it all home with Section 6, consistency over intensity.
To really bring this all down to earth, let's look at a tale of 2 paths that perfectly summarizes everything we've talked about today. We're going to look at 2 hypothetical entrepreneurs who put in the exact same amount of effort, but aimed at entirely different targets. Here's the ultimate showdown. Daniel secured true wealth and time through a boring system, while Alex worked even harder, but totally burned out, chasing the intensity of trends. Daniel simply bought a 12-year-old laundromat. He didn't even rebrand the thing. He just fixed the broken machines and optimized the operating hours. Within 18 months, it fully replaced his corporate salary. Alex, meanwhile, jumped from an online clothing brand to a crypto channel to a supplement line. Alex constantly had to invent new demand from scratch, while Daniel simply serviced demand that was already waiting in line for him.
And this proves a pretty timeless principle. Whether the economy is booming or busting, essential human needs never vanish, which means boring businesses are practically built for recessions. When economic news gets terrifying, the trend chaser panics because luxury spending drops off a cliff, but the owner of the shared storage space they might actually see an increase in business as families have to downsize their homes. Consistency always beats intensity over the long run.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to really challenge your own biases. Because the choice between becoming Daniel or Alex, that starts with the quiet conversation you have in your own head today. Is it the idea of finally letting go of your ego? Is it facing a life without the constant adrenaline of a viral launch? Or is it shifting your mind to think purely in terms of systems? Whichever shift makes you the most uncomfortable right now, that is exactly the one holding you back from true financial control.